So over the past couple of years, I have been watching the Halloween series for the first time. Starting in 2019, I watched Halloween 78, Halloween H2O, Halloween Resurrection, the 2 Rob Zombie movies, and the 2018 film. I didn't watch the series in 2020, but then just last year I went back to the series since Halloween Kills came out last year, but I only watched the original Halloween 2 from 1981. I did that since Halloween Kills is a sequel, so I thought I'd watch the original sequel, leaving me with Halloween 3 through 6 left for me to watch for the first time. Which I did leading up to Halloween Ends, which was recently released, so now I have officially seen every Halloween movie ever made, so now I wanted to give my thoughts on each movie, but didn't really want to go too deep into it, mainly because even though there are some that I like more than others, but otherwise there's not really much I can say about these films. They're pretty straightforward, at least most of them are. Plus, I don't think there's really anything new I can add while evaluating this series, so instead, I thought I'd give you a special video where I just give you my rating of each film, plus a sentence or two telling you how I feel about each film. Nothing serious, just me summing up what I took away from each film, and plus I added a special award to each film, mainly so I can praise or make fun of them some more. After I rate each film, I will tell you how I rank each of them, so without further ado, let's begin. This original classic still holds up surprisingly. The twist of Laurie being Michael Myers' sister is the only thing everybody really takes away from this. Critics and audience just didn't see the vision.
Stop it! Stop it! Stop it!
Well, it's a good thing Jamie Lee clocked out of this franchise at this point because it's all downhill from here. Dr. Loomis really should have his medical license taken away after failing to rehabilitate 2 mentally ill children. They really tried to use cult magic as an excuse to explain Michael Myers. On the plus side, Paul Rudd really hasn't aged since this movie. Also, R.I.P. Donald Pleasance. This could have been the definitive end to the Laurie and Michael story, but the next movie just had to undo it. When Michael Myers kills Laurie Strode in the beginning, you can almost hear Jamie Lee Curtis yelling, "Freedom!" Maybe a product of the late 2000s, but at least it brought something new. Well, this was a sign for Hollywood to stop making horror remakes. Now this is the true sequel to the original. This was clearly a bridge film to get to the third film. She may have gotten sidelined along with Michael Myers, but a great send-off to the Laurie Strode character. Thank you, Jamie Lee Curtis. So that's every Halloween movie, at least until they decide to reboot the franchise in 2028. Halloween H5O, 50 years later, not coming soon enough to a theater near you. Now let's get into how I rank every Halloween movie. And coming in last place is Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. And I wasn't kidding, this movie is a little uncomfortable because the Jamie character from the previous movies before this was kidnapped, got supposedly raped by her own uncle, Michael Myers, and the baby is his. And there's that whole plot of this cult that essentially made Michael Myers as the evil he is. This is truly the most bizarre of the movies, but on the plus side, the kills are still there. It's unfortunate that this was Paul Rudd's first film, but hey, he is Ant-Man, so the world still balances out. And to everybody else in this movie and the universe, I apologize. I have not seen the producer's cut, but I'm sure the movie is still not any better. Moving on, and again, rest in peace, Donald Pleasance. Coming at number 12 is Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, which is my second least favorite of the series because while there are elements of the first Rob Zombie movie that I did like, this sequel has all the elements I didn't like but turned up a notch, which is all the Rob Zombie isms. The grit that the first film had just kind of took over and overdid it, and it has all the weird magical stuff which never worked for this series, at least for me at least. At number 11 is Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. I didn't dislike this movie, but I didn't like it either. It's just one of those movies that it's just there, and clearly the studio was trying to capitalize off the success of the fourth film where Michael Myers returns, and seriously, Dr. Loomis should have his doctor's license taken away after failing to rehabilitate 2 mentally ill children. Speaking of Halloween 4, my number 10 spot goes to Halloween 4, Return of Michael Myers. After the failures of the third film, which we'll get into shortly, they wanted to go back to what people loved about the films, which is Michael Myers. And he does come back swinging. All that said, it's still just a typical slasher film that still managed to recharge people's interest in the Halloween franchise. At number 9 is Halloween Resurrection. Now, I know people like to think of this as the worst, and I don't blame them, but this entry in the series is high for me, at least at number 9, because while it's clearly a product of the early 2000s in trying to capitalize off of the success of the Blair Witch Project at that time, I still found it funny, and at least they were trying to do something different but still failed, and Busta Rhymes kept this movie interesting because he is funny in the movie. At number 8 is Halloween 2 from 1981. Right here is when we start to get into the Halloween movies that I either like or thought it had some moments. And Halloween 2 I thought was an entertaining follow-up to the original 1978 film, and the twists, I can either take it or leave it. At number 7 is Rob Zombie's Halloween. I thought it's not only just a good take on the character, but they actually flesh out why he is so evil, which I did appreciate. But the Rob Zombie isms are still here, and whether you like them or not, that's up to you to decide. I just thought this film did a good job at the evolution and the psychology of Michael Myers. At number 6 is Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, which is to most people the black sheep of the franchise. After the 2 Halloween movies by John Carpenter, he wanted to turn this into an anthology series where every movie is a different story with different characters, and on paper it sounds like a good idea, but when this franchise is primarily known for Michael Myers, people will be thrown off by it. Now, me personally, I thought this was a good idea, and as someone that watched this movie for the first time, I like and admire for how different and weird it is, even the elements that don't exactly work. But John Carpenter, thank you for trying to do something different. It's not your fault critics and audiences just didn't see the vision. At number 5 is Halloween Ends, and spoiler alert since this is the most recent entry in the franchise, Halloween Ends is the conclusion to the H4O timeline, and while the story kinda got overshadowed by the Corey kid and how him accidentally killing a kid in the beginning, therefore turning the town against him, which sends him down this dark path to be as evil as Michael Myers, to the point where the movie is trying to pass him off as the new Michael Myers, but at least Michael said, nah, this is my franchise, bitch. Just like Season of the Witch, I do appreciate how this movie is different, and one thing I like about the timeline is how each film has something to say. In Halloween 2018, had something to say about the trauma and PTSD that Laurie went through the events in the first film, that she basically picked herself up and Sarah Connor this shit, just in case Michael Myers returns. Halloween Kills has something to say about mob mentality and how this one person is driving the whole town crazy. Here, Halloween Ends has something to say about how a series of unfortunate circumstances can lead a person down the wrong path, and how all it takes is that one moment to send that person over the edge. The final showdown between Michael and Laurie is my favorite part of the movie, and yes, they finally killed Michael Myers. And they don't just kill him, they sliced his neck up, slit his wrist, put him on top of the car so that the whole town of Haddonfield can see. And that one cop dude, he says, it's time for Haddonfield to heal. I was like, fuck yes! And the icing on the cake is when they put Michael's dead corpse in that shredder machine, whatever you call it. I also like how this was a good send-off to the Laurie Strode character. Thank you, Jamie Lee Curtis. Michael Myers may be the face of the series, but Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode is the heart. Coming in at number 4 is Halloween Kills. Now, you may be shocked I have this over Halloween Ends, but honestly, I go back and forth over which one I like more between the two. But as of now, I like Kills more because of how fun it is. Brutal, straightforward, even if it's at the expense of characters making dumb decisions and Lauren getting sidelined. But like I said, I like that this movie has something to say about mob mentality and how this one person is making the whole town go crazy. At number 3 is Halloween H2O, 20 years later, which is the first movie to retcon the previous sequels. Now, maybe I just have a soft spot in my heart for this movie because it came up during the time of the Scream movies, but I like the idea of this movie taking place 20 years after the events of the original movie, and now Laurie must confront Michael one last time, and it does conclude in a finale where Laurie comes out the victor. Too bad it's all undid by the first 5 minutes of Halloween Resurrection. At number 2 is Halloween 2018, or as I like to call it, Halloween H4O, because like H2O, this is the second movie that retcons previous movies by being a direct sequel to the original. And while it may not be the best in the series, it is my favorite simply for how they handled Laurie Strode, and how her character has trauma and PTSD over the events of the original film, and she basically Sarah Connors herself in case Michael comes back. Danny McBride and crew injected some new life into this series with this film, and I loved it. Perhaps the best we have seen the Laurie Strode character. And finally, at number 1 is the original Halloween from 1978, which most people would have at number 1, which is a little cliche at this point, but there is a reason why the original film still stands the test of time. It really was the perfect blueprint for a slasher film. I also just love how they set up Michael Myers in the first 5 minutes with the reveal of this kid murdering his sister, Dr. Loomis's explanation of Michael just being pure evil. Plus, it just amazes me how John Carpenter was able to do so much with so little in this film in terms of the filmmaking. And I guess I kind of have a soft spot for this movie because this movie did come out in the 70s, so I just like to think of this movie as a slice of life from the 70s. It is basically a time capsule of a movie. So in conclusion, now that I have seen every Halloween film, I do like this series, but it's not particularly my favorite series with a horror icon. I give that to A Nightmare on Elm Street, but I do recognize and respect the impact this series has had. And like I said, thank you Jamie Lee Curtis for paving the way for other Scream queens. As far as where the series will go after Halloween ends, I mean, I'm not convinced that this is the last Halloween movie. In fact, I really wish they would revisit the idea of this being an anthology series like Season of the Witch, but I know that's not going to happen, even though I think audiences may be open-minded enough for that, but hey, what do I know? It is inevitable that this series will be rebooted again at some point, but after all the crap we had to sit through in this series, I'm sure I'm not the only one that wishes this series would take Busta Rhymes' advice and
Scoop! Skedaddle! Get the fuck out of Dodge!
That's it for today. Here is a recap of how I rate every film, and right here is a recap of how I rank every film. Thank you so much for watching, and if you like this video, hit the like button and comment, tell me what you think. Stay safe, wash your hands, and until next time...
Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it!